Hello there, you're watching Nightline. I'm Anita. News making the headlines. No more procurements without tender, says Prime Minister. And Baling MP investigated over remark accusing PM of being Israeli agent. Our headlining story. Approvals for government procurements under the new government can no longer be conducted without tender. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim stressed that the government under his leadership would not allow leakages and corruption to continue.
Dan ini harus berlaku di semua peringkat. Maka untuk peringkat awal ini saya ingin mengajak saudara untuk sama-sama dalam pasukan ini. Mari kita bertekad untuk menyelamatkan negara kita.
Speaking at a civil service gathering in Putrajaya on Tuesday, the Prime Minister added when he was in charge of the Finance Ministry, he had also given instructions not to allow his family members or close friends to have interests in government-related projects. Also present at the gathering were Chief Secretary to the Government, Tan Sri Muhammad Zuki Ali, and Attorney General Tan Sri Idrus Harun. Meanwhile, Datuk Seri Anwar also called on civil servants to work with the new leadership to reform the country and bring Malaysia back to its glory days. The Prime Minister said the unity government led by him would not be successful without the support of the civil service, which he considered as a pillar of the country.
Negara ini memerlukan perubahan. Suatu tahap yang malangnya merosot. Merosot itu baik ekonominya, baik kestabilannya ataupun disiplinnya, dan tentunya Tan Sri Peguam Negara tahu tentang pelanggaran hukum termasuk isu-isu penyelewengan dan rasuah yang kadang-kadang juga ada kaitannya kerana kelemahan pimpinan kaitannya dengan peringkat pejabat awam.
He said this when addressing the staff of the Prime Minister's department, his first meeting with them since his appointment as Prime Minister last Thursday. Datuk Seri Anwar pointed out that he was not interested in bringing up indiscretions from previous administrations and that the focus should be on carrying the nation forward and to restore the image of the civil service. He also said he would call upon his incoming cabinet colleagues to respect and listen to the public servants' views, especially those with vast experience in their respective areas, and forge good working relations with them. Now, Datuk Seri Anwar's insistence that the governance process under his administration would no longer allow procurements of projects to be approved without tender would ensure greater transparency in the government. For University Putra Malaysia, UPM Putra Business School economic analyst, Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Razman Abdul Latif, he believed that the approach could also prevent wasteful government expenditure at the expense of taxpayers, although public procurement through direct negotiations may be required in some cases.
Perhaps with some exception for those procurement that involve national security or limited expertise. Hopefully, when majority of the procurement job are conducted using tender process, government can reduce wastages, leakages and corruption that normally associated with procurement without tender. I will not be surprised if savings from this approach can amount to hundreds of millions of ringgit as long as it is conducted fairly and properly.
Meanwhile, the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC, has lauded Datuk Seri Anwar's intention to do away with public procurement without a tender process. Its Chief Commissioner, Tan Sri Azam Baki, said such a move would put an end to cronyism and help curb corruption. Tan Sri Azam added the MACC, as the agency tasked with fighting corruption, and the Finance Ministry have also launched the Integrity Pack, which requires tender applicants to take an oath that they are not involved in bribery in order for them to get a government tender. He also pointed out there were already procedures in place involving Treasury matters, all of which should be followed by those involved in any tender process. He also said that only certain tenders will be awarded via direct negotiations where it may be necessary to do so. Despite this, he stressed that it should be done in a transparent manner to ensure that there is no abuse of power or graft involved. Baling Member of Parliament Hassan Saad is being probed by police for allegedly claiming Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim is an Israeli agent. Royal Malaysia Police PDRM Secretary Datuk Nursiah Muhammad Saaduddin said authorities opened an investigation on the MP after they received police reports on the matter. In a brief statement on Tuesday, she said that the investigation was being conducted by Bukit Aman's Classified Crime Investigation Unit, USJT, Prosecution and Law Division, D5, and Criminal Investigation Department, CID. The case is classified under the Penal Code for intentional insult with intent to provoke a breach of the peace and defamation, as well as the Communications and Multimedia Act 1998 for improper use of network facilities or network services. Meanwhile, Datuk Seri Anwar has issued a letter through law firm SN Nair and Partners demanding the Baling MP to apologise and retract his claims within 3 days, or legal action would be taken against him. Earlier, Putrajaya PKR Youth Chief Muhammad Shazrin Izzam Muhammad Saidi lodged a police report at the Putrajaya District Police Headquarters in Precinct 7, asking authorities to investigate allegations portraying its party president as an Israeli agent. On Monday, Pakatan Harapan was also reported as saying it would take legal action against anyone linking its leaders to such claims. Amanah has decided that its candidate representing Pakatan Harapan PH in the Tioman election will give way to the Barisan Nasional BN candidate to boost the coalition's chances of beating Perikatan Nasional PN. Amanah Secretary-General Dr. Muhammad Hatta Mat Ramli said this was a sign of cooperation between PH and BN, which was consistent with efforts to strengthen the Pahang and federal unity governments. In a statement on Tuesday, he said that the PH election machinery will also work together with BN to ensure victory for its candidate. This as Amanah sees the need to strengthen unity among components of the state government to take on the PN candidate. Polling for the Tioman state seat under the 15th general election GE15 was postponed to December 7th after PN candidate Mat Yunus Ramli died on polling day on November 19th, believed due to a heart attack. PH's Muhammad Fazli Muhammad Ramli is in a five-cornered fight with BN's incumbent assemblyman Datuk Seri Muhammad Johari Hussein, Osman A. Bakar of Pejuang, independent candidate Sulaiman Bakar, and PN's Nur Idayu Hashim, who replaced Mat Yunus. Meanwhile, the name of PH candidate Muhammad Fazli Muhammad Ramli will still be printed on the ballot papers for the Tioman state election in Pahang. This despite his party having decided to make way for BN to increase the chances of its candidate winning the state seat. State Election Commission Director Datuk Zamri Hamli said the status of candidates cannot be changed after their nominations were accepted. He also said the PH candidate can continue to campaign and electors can also vote for him during polling on December 7th. In the meantime, PH is not ruling out the possibility of working together with BN in the Selangor state election to be held next year. Selangor State Assembly Speaker Ng Swee Lim said this is based on the latest political development in the country, which saw both coalitions, together with several other parties, forming a unity government at the federal level following the GE15.
Selangor, saya rasa Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Menteri Besar dia akan pasti akan gunakan pendekatan yang lebih inklusif terbuka untuk pastikan kita punya tabungan kerajaan perpaduan di peringkat Putrajaya kokoh, dan di negeri Selangor kalau dah ditakdirkan untuk bekerjasama dan untuk ini selaras dengan titah Duli Yang Maha Mulia Seri Paduka Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Saya rasa kita di Selangor.
Who is also Selangor DAP Vice Chairman, added that the position of the opposition leader in the Selangor State Assembly will be known after the formation of the cabinet. He also said he had not received any instruction on the status of the state opposition leader, currently held by Ayer Tawar Assemblyman Datuk Rizam Ismail of BN. The composition of seats in the Selangor State Assembly consists of PH with 40, BN 5, Bersatu 4, 2 each from Parti Bangsa Malaysia and Pejuang, whereas the remaining 3 seats are being held by PAS, Warisan and an independent. Despite the increasingly challenging landscape, Media Prima Berhad, MPB, continued to return higher revenues and profits. In the 9-month period to September 30th for the 2022 financial year, the group posted a 27 million ringgit profit after tax, PAT, on a revenue of 745.2 million ringgit. This was a 15% increase in PAT compared with the previous corresponding period. The group also posted encouraging results across all its businesses. In a statement on Tuesday, MPB said its advertising revenue registered a 7% increase in the first 9 months of the same financial year compared with the same period in 2021, driven mostly by its marketing solutions subsidiary, Media Prima Omnia. Its broadcasting businesses, Media Prima Television Networks and Media Prima Audio, saw a 9% growth to 355.1 million ringgit in the current financial period from 326 million ringgit previously. The group's digital arm, Rev Media Group, also registered an 11% increase in revenue to 73.8 million ringgit from 66.6 million ringgit, while its out-of-home segment, Big Tree, saw earnings rise by 23%. World's largest active volcano erupts for the first time in 40 years. The details when we return. Don't go away. On the foreign front, Rishi Sunak has said China poses a systemic challenge to United Kingdom's values and interests as his government condemned Beijing after a BBC journalist was beaten while covering protests in Shanghai. In his first major foreign policy speech, the British Prime Minister stated the so-called golden era of UK relations with China was over, along with the naive idea that trade would lead to social and political reform. Thus, he stressed that the UK would need to evolve its approach towards China, adding that his government will prioritise deepening trade and security ties with Indo-Pacific allies instead. Previously, Sunak has promised to close all Confucius institutes which promote Chinese culture and language but are partially funded by the Chinese government, and said he would lead an international alliance against Chinese cyber threats and help British companies and universities counter Chinese spying. Over in the US, people living on the slopes of the Mauna Loa volcano in Hawaii have been told to prepare for a worst-case scenario as the world's largest active volcano erupts for the first time in almost 40 years, belching volcanic ash into the air. Authorities said the residents have been placed on alert as the U.S. Geological Service, USGS, upgrade the volcano's alert level from advisory to warning, the highest classification. Even so, it was understood that no evacuation orders have been issued, as officials said populated areas are unlikely to be impacted at this stage. While the eruption of Mauna Loa would not immediately endanger towns, the USGS, however, has warned that the roughly 200,000 people on the Big Island that an eruption can be very dynamic and the location and advance of lava flows could change rapidly. Officials also urged the public to stay away from the lava, given the dangers posed by the volcano, which is shooting 30 to 60 meters into the air out of 3 separate fissures, roughly estimated to be 1.6 to 3.2 kilometers long. Over in Palestine, Palestinians were killed in separate incidents by Israeli troops on Tuesday, the latest bloodshed in a mounting surge of Israeli-Palestinian violence. Palestinian Health Ministry said 2 brothers in their 20s were killed by Israeli fire near Ramallah. A third man was shot dead near Hebron. Earlier, another man was shot in the head in Beit Umar, about 10 kilometers north of Hebron. Palestinian Authority Civil Affairs Minister Hussein al-Sheikh described the killing of the 2 brothers as an execution in cold blood. On Monday, the United Nations envoy for Middle East peace, Tor Vinnesland, warned the situation in the West Bank was reaching a boiling point. The UN says more than 125 Palestinians have been killed across the West Bank just this year. Twitter CEO Elon Musk claimed that Apple has halted most of its advertising on Twitter and accused the company of threatening to remove the platform from its iOS App Store, a move that could be devastating to the company he just acquired for $44 billion. In a series of tweets on Monday, Musk accused Apple of censorship and criticized its policies, including the charge it levies on purchases made on its App Store. The feud comes as many companies have halted spending on Twitter amid concerns about Musk's content moderation plans for the site. Removal from Apple's App Store or that of Google would be detrimental to Twitter's business, which is already struggling with a loss of advertisers. Apple did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Musk's tweets. Coming up, Brazil, Portugal advance to last 16. Action from the World Cup when we return. Don't go away.
Seram
Football, the 2022 World Cup. A second-half brace from Bruno Fernandes sent Portugal through to the last 16 of the World Cup to join France and Brazil after a 2-0 win over a lacklustre Uruguay. Fernandes scored with a cross intended for Cristiano Ronaldo that sailed fortuitously into the net at the 54th minute and converted a spot kick in stoppage time to put his side into the knockout stages with a match remaining. Portugal's second win in 2 games put them at the top of Group H on 6 points and heading into the last 16. Uruguay, third on 1 point, must beat Ghana in their final group game to have a chance of progressing. In an earlier match, Casemiro showed his misfiring strikers how to finish when he lashed in an unstoppable shot late in the game to give Brazil a 1-0 win over Switzerland, which sees the five-time champions progress into the knockout stage with a game to spare. A largely featureless game had been meandering towards a goalless draw when Casemiro struck 7 minutes from time to take Brazil to 6 points at the top of Group G. The absence of injured striker Neymar hung like a shadow over a shoddy Brazil, with only a disallowed goal by Vinicius Jr. giving the huge Brazilian travelling support something to cheer about before Casemiro hit the winner. Switzerland sit on 3 points, while Cameroon and Serbia, who drew 3-3 earlier on Monday, have 1 each. All 3 teams still in the hunt to progress. Preacher charged with rape, sexual assaults. This and more after the short break. Stay tuned. Nightline continues. The heavy storm that struck SMK Datuk Lokman in Kuala Lumpur on Saturday has affected some 500 students after 12 classrooms were rendered inoperable when their roofs were blown off in the incident. Titiwangsa Member of Parliament Datuk Sri Johari Abdul Ghani said immediate aid must be provided to the school to ensure the students' lessons were not disrupted for too long.
Kalau isu soal bajet tak ada dekat kementerian kerana dah hujung tahun, maka kes-kes macam ni kita boleh pakai emergency budget. Sebab itu saya nak minta PIBG buat satu surat komprehensif dan saya akan cuba minta Kementerian Pendidikan atau pengarah Kementerian Pendidikan untuk melihat benda ini secara emergency.
Datuk Sri Johari said this to reporters after visiting the school on Tuesday. He also said there was an urgency to address the matter as soon as possible, as the affected students would be sitting for their Sijil Pelajaran Malaysia SPM next March. Meanwhile, SMK Datuk Lokman PTA Chairman Sabri Ali said the same thing also happened on April 12 last year. However, the roof replacement has yet to be completed, involving 11 classes and the administration office.
Dah banyak kekurangan kelas lah. Anak-anak diletakkan di lab, di dewan, di merata-rata lah. So tindakan tu perlu diambil dengan segera, insyaAllah.
Other than maintenance and repair, the Education Ministry is also urged to review thoroughly the standard operating procedures, SOPs, for roof installation for schools to ensure such issues will not recur and endanger the safety of students. The Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Ministry, KPDN-HEP, has described the claims on the existence of cartels that hid egg supplies before and after the GE15 as baseless. Its Secretary-General Dato' Azman Muhammad Yusof said that presently the supply of eggs has yet to fully stabilise, and based on checks and monitoring carried out by the ministry, there are no nationwide shortages of eggs, except in a few states due to a surge in demand.
Tekan stabil seluruh Malaysia ni susahlah sebab ada setengah-setengah tempat memang ada masalah kekurangan, bukan tak ada, dia kekurangan. Ada sebuah tempat kata kami tak ada masalah, dan perkara ni saya monitor dengan data-data yang kita ambil daripada semua negeri-negeri.
He told this to the media at a press conference after officiating the Sehat ke Saya program in Putrajaya on Tuesday. Dato' Azman added that the ministry, in fact, did not receive any complaints regarding such activities, adding that consumers could always lodge a report to the ministry if it happens. On the issue of a hike in the prices of eggs in the market, Dato' Azman warned that stern action would be taken against industry players if they were found to have flouted the law. Since February 5th until Monday, the ministry issued compounds amounting to 534,200 ringgit against 2,205 producers, wholesalers and retailers of chicken and eggs for various offences. Over in Selangor, a preacher was charged in the Klang Sessions Court on Tuesday with 9 charges of committing rape, sexual assault and unnatural sex on a teenager between June 2021 and last February. 30-year-old Muhammad Fathi Naim Mazlam, also known as Ustaz Fathi Naim, claimed trial before Judge Shafira Muhammad Said, who fixed January 10th for case mention. The man, who has 3 wives and 8 children, was charged with 7 counts of raping and 1 count each for sexually assaulting and committing unnatural sex on a teenage girl who is now 14 years old. The offences were allegedly committed at several places in Bandar Puncak Alam. The accused was allowed bail of 40,000 ringgit with 1 shorty for all the charges and also ordered to report himself at a police station once a month, as well as to not intimidate the victim or witnesses in the case. The charges under the Penal Code and Sexual Offences Against Children Act provide imprisonment and whipping upon conviction. In Negeri Sembilan, a Vietnamese woman was charged in the Seremban Magistrates Court on Tuesday with murdering her boyfriend, who is a local, last week. 33-year-old La An Tu only nodded after the charge was read out to her before Magistrate Muhammad Firdaus Saleh, who set January 26 next year for case mention. No plea was recorded from the accused, who was also denied bail, as the case is under the jurisdiction of the High Court. It was alleged that the woman murdered the 50-year-old fruit supplier Lim Swee Siong in an apartment in Taman Bukit Lima, Seremban, on November 21st. According to the facts of the case, the body of the victim was found with wounds on his right rib. The offence under the Penal Code provides a mandatory death sentence if found guilty. As we wrap up Nightline this time around, let's take a look as these longboarders rip down one of the highest mountain roads in Austria. With that, I'm Anita. Thank you for watching and be well, Malaysia.